gracias por esperar. Muchas gracias a todos por venir a este acontecimiento que es tal vez el más importante que hemos tenido en un Filba, este marco espectacular del Teatro Cervantes y la presencia tan esperada de la escritora Lorrie Moore. A quienes nos acompañaron para que Lorrie pueda estar hoy acá, que es la editorial Encantadora, la Embajada de los Estados Unidos y la Universidad Diego Portales de Chile. Como todo lo que hacemos en Filba es el esfuerzo de muchos hombros en el camino. Y bueno, nada más que dejarlos en manos de la persona que va a conducir esta entrevista, que como todos nosotros es sobre todo un fervoroso lector, un apasionado lector, Santiago Llach.
Buenas noches. Bueno, voy a cometer un par de lugares comunes adelante de una persona que es una experta en evitarlos, pero para mí es una gran emoción y un orgullo presentar a Lorrie Moore. Lorrie Moore es una de las más reconocidas autoras estadounidenses contemporáneas, tanto en su país como fuera de él. Ha publicado 4 libros de cuentos y 3 novelas, además de un libro que reúne sus artículos y ensayos. En la Argentina fue publicado por la editorial MC a fines de los años 90. Fue muy leída y admirada tanto por escritores como por lectores. Sus libros, de algún modo, dejaron de estar en las librerías durante un tiempo, pero parece que fueron igual leídos, quizá en fotocopias o después cualquier cosa podés llamar a un abogado, o de manera subterránea. Pero Lorrie, para usar otro lugar común, se convirtió en lo que se suele denominar una autora de culto. Y ahora, bueno, con la publicación, algunos de sus libros fueron publicados, por supuesto, en España, no llegaron tanto acá, algunos de ellos sí, pero ahora con la publicación de la novela Hospital de Ranas por la editorial Eterna Cadencia, Lorrie, este culto se convirtió en algo más visible y en efecto Lorrie ahora tiene muchos lectores. Voy a leer unas pequeñas palabras introductorias y luego pasaremos a la entrevista. Lorrie Moore escribe como retorciendo las sílabas para encontrar en ellas los átomos de la poesía. Está tan atenta a las palabras que leer su prosa es como escuchar música. Y en paralelo ofrece una empatía sideral con sus personajes, siempre funcionales en apariencia, pero desgarrados por dentro. Como una mezcla de Shakespeare con Alicia en el País de las Maravillas, saca de la galera metáforas y metáforas llenas de gracia y tristeza. Exprime la lengua inglesa con conciencia melancólica y un humor consolador. Narra la experiencia de la vida contemporánea, yendo al corazón del equívoco, y encuentra belleza en las fronteras del sinsentido interior. Bueno, good evening, Lorrie.
Thank you very much. I thought I should just leave right now. It's been a wonderful evening. Thank you for coming.
We can leave.
Astonishing. Very, very beautiful. I do feel I stole these headphones from the plane, but I didn't. I'm sure it looks as if I have. But I'm just getting used to the whole sound system, so we'll be okay.
So do I.
Okay.
Bueno, me gustaría que a lo largo de esta entrevista hagamos un pequeño recorrido por tu obra, tus temas y tus procedimientos de escritura. En tu primer libro, Self-Help, Autoayuda, publicado en 1985, experimentaste con una segunda persona en modo imperativo, a la manera de los libros de autoayuda. ¿Te interesa algo en el discurso de la autoayuda, más allá de ironizar sobre él?
I was interested in that second person point of view because it was used a lot in poetry, and I found it a sort of poetic voice and perspective, and I didn't see it being used in fiction. And I thought, if you took the you off the front of the sentence, the you, this and that, it becomes this mock imperative, which is a kind of satire on the self-help, industry. So I wrote one story that was called How, which I understood at the time was really how not to. It was filled with mistakes, mistakes of judgment, decision, life mistakes. And I went on to write 6 more how stories in self-help, which were all they were all stories of mistakes. And that's what stories are. There's, the stories we like to read at any rate are full of mistakes that people have made, and that's what you want to read about. You don't want to read about a person who's never made a mistake. That would be very dull. Probably impossible. But if they did write a story like that, that would be their first mistake.
En ese sentido, en el sentido de los errores, en uno de los cuentos de self-help, de autoayuda, que se llama Cómo convertirse en escritora, How to Become a Writer, una joven aspirante a escritora se topa todo el tiempo con profesores que le dicen que a sus textos le falta trama o argumento. Parece una temprana profecía sobre tu propia obra, en la cual los juegos de lenguaje, los equívocos y los malentendidos a veces distraen de la trama o ocultan la trama. Entonces es así como una especie de anuncio temprano de tu poética.
I didn't at the time, but I have to say the American short story sort of, I think, followed in the wake of Chekhov, and then Ray Carver, Hemingway, Carver, and they were stories of, finally all of them wrote stories of sort of paralysis and stasis, and they weren't heavy on guns going off and people dying and wives being murdered and stuffed into suitcases, which is in an Argentinian story I just read, which I really love, which is the Samantha Schweblin, which we'll talk about later. I just gave the story away, sorry about that. So I didn't feel that I was prophesying anything about me, but I think the idea of a highly articulated plot is not, by and large, what the American short story has tended to do. And people who don't understand that the literary short story doesn't do that, it's not going to be explosive and full of action, will always scratch their heads and say, what am I doing here? But if it has language, if it has a character, if it has a voice, if it has a situation, if it asks interesting questions, then that's why you want to stay there, not because a gun goes off. That said, Samantha Schweblin's story about a man who murders his wife and cuts her up and puts her in a suitcase is excellent. It's very, very good.
Los cuentos de Samantha Schweblin me hacen acordar, adelantándome un poco, a tu tercer libro, Like Life, que tiene también un clima extraño. ¿Reconoces alguna similitud en ese sentido?
What? My third book?
Like Life.
Oh. Are there, do people die in there?
Yes.
People die?
Almost.
See, almost is not the same. People die? Well, yeah, someone almost throws himself off of a bridge. Yeah. But that's just one story. It's not being chopped up into a suitcase. That's bold.
Hay más de un personaje que quiere suicidarse en ese libro.
I'm trying to remember it. Willing to commit suicide? Really?
En realidad discutimos sobre un cuento cuyo título ahora no recuerdo, por ahí alguno me puede ayudar, de una actriz que...
Oh yes, that one. That's in another book. Yeah, that's right. She does.
She goes flying.
She goes flying, and who's to say? Yeah, but that's a death. Yeah.
Bueno,
still not chopping up your wife and putting her in a suitcase.
Volviendo un poco a este cuento, cómo convertirse en escritora, digamos que la escritora encuentra su éxito en el fracaso. Entonces, ves una relación entre escribir o entre encontrar el propio estilo trabajando sobre los propios errores o las propias limitaciones.
I think one's always working with one's mistakes and with one's weaknesses and trying to push past them, and perhaps they all contain little doors that can be opened or that you might find a key to. That story that you're referring to, which is How to Become a Writer, which is in my very first book, was written in a week. I've never written a story that quickly. And I was writing it for the final reading in my graduate student program at Cornell. And they had something called the Red Barn Reading, where all of us who were, finishing up our program had to give a reading from something that we'd written. And I didn't really feel I had anything I wanted to read. So I thought, I'll write a story called How to Become a Writer, which is what we had all been in school for. And I'll make a lot of inside jokes and, kind of make it, I don't know what I was doing, but at any rate, so I wrote it for that event. I've never written a story for an event. I've never written a story in a week, but that's the story I did both those things for. And in the Red Barn, it was a big success. Everybody understood what I was talking about. I was quite surprised later when other readers responded to it, because I felt it was full of inside jokes about student writing. But whatever, it's about mistakes and how your mistakes are sort of funny. And how your mistakes are sort of obvious later on, but not at the time.
Creo que de todas formas es un poco un cuento de autoayuda para jóvenes aspirantes a escritores. Y en un sentido es esperanzador.
Yeah. Good. Good.
A mis alumnos les dan ganas de escribir cuando leen ese cuento.
Oh, good. Oh, good. I'm glad they do. Because I suppose it captures a sense of, things are not going to be perfect. Things are going to be a little rough, and you're going to go through life a little misunderstood, and your work is going to be a little misunderstood. And that's a good idea to have, because it will come true. But it doesn't mean you don't keep going, You're in it for the long haul, for the long game. And I guess I knew at the time that I was in it for the long game, forever.
¿Es como un matrimonio la escritura?
Oh, no.
Como los viejos matrimonios que duraban para toda la vida.
No, writing is much more eternal than marriage. Marriage is a contract between, the writing makes no contract with you. It's just, you do it forever. You don't need another person. You know, marriage, it's like, it takes two people to get married, it only takes one to get divorced. So, at least in the States, I don't know how the law works here. So it's not really like marriage quite that way. It's like the perfect marriage, maybe. It's like the perfect marriage.
Tu siguiente libro, Anagrams, fue publicado en inglés en 1986 y fue el primer libro publicado en español en España en 1990, aunque pienso que no llegó a la Argentina. Recién será publicado 30 años más tarde, el año que viene, en 2020, por Eterna Cadencia, y los lectores se encontrarán con un experimento narrativo bastante extraño e interesante. Mi pregunta ¿es un libro de cuentos o una novela? ¿O algo en el medio?
Oh, I thought of it as my very first novel, but I had the habit of short story writing, where I was used to stopping every 20 minutes, or 20 pages, excuse me, 20 minutes, every 20 pages, and reassembling a new cast of characters. That's the beauty of writing short stories. They're like little plays. You have a cast of characters for a while, you spend months with them, and then you say goodbye, go on your merry way, and you assemble a new cast of characters. And I was so used to doing that I started doing it with this novel. And so I was doing it with the same characters. So I thought, and also in a novel you have to make decisions I wasn't used to making, where if someone is going to be a teacher, they have to be a teacher through the whole novel. They can't also be a musician, an aerobics teacher, and all these things. And I thought, well, I don't want to confine these characters to a 250-page fate that is going to be very dull for them. So I thought, I'll just let them do whatever they want. So I both indulged my habits of rearranging casts of characters and indulged and allowed them to be different things. And so I thought of this as a novel about choice and about permutation and about recombinations of things. And so I did think of it as a novel, and I thought ideally it would be a mobile hanging, and then, because there's a long central novella in it, and that the other stories, which are rearrangements, and so the book is called Anagrams for the rearrangements. I thought of them as ideally sort of coming off of them like a Calder mobile. But you can't publish books that way. You have to impose a sequence on them. And so it looks like 4 stories in a novella. But it really is a Calder mobile, actually, is what it is. And then in my mind, I thought, well, this is about this. There's an existential question it's asking, which is, if you only have one life, is this a kind of tragedy that you can't also sort of have these other lives? But also that the very kernel of life, biological life, is made up of recombinant things. It's things rearranging themselves and coming out as a new organism. So I was asking a lot of questions about arrangements, and then I called it Anagrams, and it got very bad reviews. But I get a lot of mail about that novel. I get more mail about that book than any other book, because people who have read it are very lonely. They don't know anyone else who has read this book. So they write to me, the author. And so it's an interesting situation. I usually try to write back, and she says, "Thank you for reading this book."
Muy apropiadamente, en español, Anagrams fue publicado en la editorial Anagrama. ¿Sabías eso?
I know. Yes, I did. Yeah, it was a little strange. Yeah.
Bien, vuelvo a tu tercer libro, Like Life, como la vida, cuyos cuentos están protagonizados generalmente por mujeres, también algún hombre, alrededor de los 30 años. Yo lo veo como un libro bastante tormentoso y, bueno, cuando son mujeres lidian con los mandatos de la maternidad y el matrimonio. Por otro lado, en un ensayo sobre Lena Dunham, que publicaste bastante después, decís que los años posteriores a la salida de la universidad son un purgatorio. ¿Cómo fue tu propia negociación entre matrimonio, maternidad y trabajo literario?
Okay. Wow. Badly. I wrote some good things and I wrote some not so good things. I probably married the wrong person. I probably took the wrong job. I probably made a lot of mistakes, but I survived. And I didn't, the beautiful thing about so many mistakes, especially the major mistakes, is you don't really realize they're mistakes at the time. So it's fine. You only realize later that it's like, wow, I ruined my life and now I'm 80. But I just kept going. And when you're young, you have energy. You have energy to do all kinds of things. And I took a job after college, I took a job in a law firm in New York. I wanted to be in New York. So many people ask me to this day, what was New York like in the 1970s? And I just said to someone, was it to you? I said to someone, about Buenos Aires, in the Palermo neighborhood. I said, this is like New York in the 70s. But that's mostly because I'm constantly asked, because there's a mythology that is worked up in the United States that New York in the 70s was the last decade of true grungy New York and exciting New York and authentic New York. And then the money and the stockbrokers and the artists left, the stockbrokers took over. I mean, there's that sense of that having happened. And everybody rushed from Soho to Brooklyn, the young people. But at any rate, then I worked in a law firm, and then I went to graduate school at Cornell and left New York. I was not happy to leave New York, but I had to because Cornell just gave me a better financial deal, and I had to do that. And I thought, I'll never see another bagel again. But it turns out there's a bagel shop on the main street right next to the Cornell campus. So, and so I did that for 4 years. I did 2 years as a student and 2 years as a lecturer. Then I took a job teaching in Wisconsin. At this point, I'm 27 years old. You can tell me when to stop. I could just go through all the years.
You could go on.
We could be here all night. You might be right.
Vos sos la que tiene que hablar hoy.
And I took a job in Wisconsin, a state I knew nothing about. And it was 1,000 miles away, and I went all by myself at the age of 27. All right. And then flash forward 30 years. I taught there for 30 years. I took a job in Nashville. That's where I am now. But in the 30 years at Wisconsin, I married a local Wisconsin guy, raised a local Wisconsin guy, then got divorced, then dated a Wisconsin guy for about 11 years. So I might be done with the Wisconsin guys. They're very handsome, but very difficult. They are.
Ya que estamos con los errores, ¿y cometiste alguna vez algún error a propósito para después escribirlo?
Oh, I know you. Did you ask me this before? Someone else asked me this before.
I'm not very original.
I would not. No, I thought it was a very original question and startling. So, at any rate, no, I don't think that I have. No, maybe someone asked me, did I ever do something deliberately to write about it? And I haven't really done that. I've had ideas that I want to write about, and then I have to actually go do some research to sort of figure out what I should say. But have I made a life mistake? Like, not a big life mistake. Like, you wouldn't marry someone so you could write a novel about it.
Why not?
Why not? You're more adventurous. You're more a true writer than I am. I would never do that. But you're going to, you're going to make enough mistakes. You don't have to create them.
Te leo una frase del cuento Like Life. Se enfrascaba en sus divagaciones sobre arte del desastre teórico, argumentando que si puedes pintar atrocidades, puedes evitarlas. Anticípate e imita, decía. Es posible impedir y desalentar un holocausto privándolo de su originalidad. Basta de libros, teatro y pintura. Se puede cambiar la historia llegando primero. ¿Eso es pura ironía o sentís que pronunciar o contar lo más terrible es una manera de conjurarlo, de evitar que ocurra?
Well, I mean, that was assigned to a character thinking that, but it's an old-fashioned idea of good luck and bad luck, that the bad things that will happen to you are things that you haven't thought of. So you have to think of everything. It's going to be the safe dropping from the 10th floor, the thing you didn't think of that is going to get you. But if you think, it's superstitiousness, but if you think of every single thing, you got it covered. Nothing can happen to you that you haven't already. But it's just because most horrible things that happen to you in life are things you never thought would happen, right? That's partly why they're horrible. You just never thought this would happen. But so that's what the character's doing, is just being superstitious. Now, is there a way of rehearsing? I think there was a kind of aesthetic idea that was being put forward in that story, that narrative itself can be put forward as a rehearsal to prevent something terrible. In the 19th century, people thought, oh no, if we don't do something about all these horses and carriages, the roads are going to fill up with horse manure. People thought that was the environmental anxiety at the time. But to articulate it, to worry about it, helps prevent it. And so that's what we're doing with climate change, the climate change conversation. We're thinking about it in order to prevent it. We're imagining it, we're having narratives of it, conversations, and, with luck. We have to knock on wood and there's no wood. See how superstitious I am. This is wood. You can knock on it there.
Kind of.
Is knocking on wood not done in Argentina? Yes, it is done? It is done? Okay. All right.
So we can do Bueno, en el cuento Canonical Babbling, balbuceo canónico, cuando su bebé se le descubre cáncer, la madre se culpa a sí misma por todas las veces que dijo cosas negativas acerca de su hijo, ¿no? También hay algo con la culpa en esto de anunciar desastres.
She doesn't say negative things about the child. She just says, she blames herself for saying, I don't want the kid to be healthy, I just want him to be rich. You know, so there are a bunch of sort of tossed off thoughts that come back to haunt her. Because the fact is, having a baby who gets cancer is never something that anyone could ever think of as happening to them. So there were lots of things that this character just, I mean, you know, all these superstitious things come back to haunt her a little bit. But she never said anything bad about the baby.
No, the baby.
She actually kissed the baby on the lips once, and she thinks, oh, now I'm being punished for kissing the baby on the lips.
El final de ese cuento tiene cierta ambigüedad. No se sabe del todo qué es lo que pasa con el bebé. ¿Vos lo viste así o le quisiste dar un determinado sentido al final? ¿O preferiste dejarlo ambiguo?
Well, it's the way illness works, you know, and it's the way cancer works. It falls into remission, which is a pause, but it's unending. It's unending. So that's the way the story ends. The story ends temporarily on the up note. They get to leave the hospital, but what's going to happen? No one ever knows with illness. You just don't know. But you get little breaks. You get little pieces of reprieve. You get remission. You get little pauses in the bad luck.
De todas maneras, creo que muchos de los finales de tus cuentos son ambiguos, ¿no?
I hope they're not ambiguous. I hope they're clear, but I also hope they're not sort of tied up neatly. Like, I hope it's clear with that story about the baby who's sick, is that these parents are going to be dealing with it forever. I hope that's not ambiguous. I hope that's clear that there is no wrapping up this particular situation or this particular story, that it's just going to continue. Because that's what certain situations and conditions involve. And that's a hard thing to get your mind around, but that's also where sometimes stories with neat endings are lying to us. You know, and then they lived happily ever after is a lie, probably a lie. Actually, it's always a lie, right? It's always, because one of them dies, you know? And then, you know, and the other one is widowed, and then, you know, but the story's not going to go there because it's going to give you this fake, artificial thing. So I hope it's clear, what I hope is clear is that there is no neat ending to anyone's life, but there can be a story, a section of the life that is a story with an open ending, because most endings are open, clear, not ambiguous, but open.
Tu siguiente libro de 1994 es Who Will Run the Frog Hospital, que acaba de ser publicado acá como quien se hará cargo del Hospital de Ranas. Acaba de ser reeditado en la Argentina en un momento de auge del movimiento feminista. Es una narración de aprendizaje, coming of age, narra la amistad entre dos amigas adolescentes en un pueblo a comienzos de los años 70, y hay un abuso o intento de abuso y también un aborto adolescente. ¿Puede ser leída como una novela feminista?
Sure. Yeah, because you know, girls are central in that. I wrote that book before, you know, the Ferrante craze. I mean, it was 20 years before the Ferrante thing, and I didn't know of any serious books about adolescent female friendships. And I thought it was a very powerful time in a girl's life. And I thought, no one takes this seriously. They, you know, and I wanted to write a serious adult book about teenage girls. And I thought, how am I going to do that? I had never seen it before. But you know, I leaned a little on Proustian ideas, and this is, you know, what I came up with. And it's framed in the adult world of the main character. And it wasn't designed to be polemical, but anytime you take seriously the lives of women, girls, young women, girls, when you take them seriously and take their issues seriously, that is an act of feminism. And so it becomes a kind of feminist art. As I was saying earlier today with the group, the novel is set in 1972, which was in the early days of abortion being legal in the United States. In some states it was legal, some states it was illegal. The Supreme Court with Roe v. Wade had declared the right of every woman to have an abortion. But still some places, and upstate New York was one of them, would not perform them for a very long time. And now everything is reverting back to that. I think there's only one place in Wisconsin where you can get an abortion. Everything's going backward. And there was one woman who was giving abortions who would give abortions in Madison, and she had to wear a bulletproof vest to work every day. Her life was under constant threat, and that's still happening, which is why places have closed up. At any rate, in my book, it's in 1972, so these girls get in a car, and they get in a taxi cab. They get in a taxi cab. That was a weird moment at my desk where I thought, no, they're going to take a taxi cab all the way to Vermont. I don't know, I had fun with that. So they have to cross the state border to a place where this one girl who is pregnant and needs an abortion can have an abortion. So abortion in the States in 1972 was still complicated, especially in rural areas. And I know here in Argentina, it's all, you know, been very difficult. And I was just saying again earlier in that talk we had this morning that Ireland just won that fight I think it was just last year, that abortion is now legal in Ireland. You know, within limitations, you know, within the first 3 months and all of that. But so when you're talking about a feminist issue and then you're telling a story that involves some history within that, that also makes it a little political, I suppose.
¿Crees que en ese sentido la literatura puede ayudar a generar conciencia sobre ciertos temas o no está en tu intención eso?
Well, it was not my intention when I wrote the book, because abortion, I mean, there wasn't a fight for abortion rights at that time, but I was registering a time when it was a little more complicated. And also I wanted to just register the secret life of teenage girls, which I don't, you know, I'm not a teenage girl now, so I don't know, but it feels like teenage girls used to have many more secrets than they have now. I'm probably completely wrong. But it does seem like teenagers now are much closer to you. You have a teenage girl, so you can talk about that.
Puedo hablar de eso, sí. De hecho, le di a leer a mi hija, quien será a cargo del hospital de ranas, que tiene 16 años, la misma edad de los protagonistas, y le encantó.
Well, so she may have, she may understand, or maybe it's a world that's so different that it's interesting to her, but maybe she identifies with the secrets of girls and how they're going to, be there for each other and rescue each other and also feel betrayed by each other. I mean, all that's very human and probably still exists. In America, teenage girls are much closer to their mothers now, and fathers. They're much closer to their parents than they used to be.
Quizás lo que pensamos nosotros, pero...
Oh, that's what they tell me.
I don't know.
That's what they tell me. I once passed, this has happened more than once, where I return papers in class to my students, and the girls get out their cell phones and take a picture right in class of the grade and the comment and send it to their mothers. Right there, right in class. I thought, wow. They say, my mom's gonna be so happy when she sees this. It's like, really? They couldn't even wait for the class to end. They're that close. They really want to please their parents. So they must have some, obviously everybody has secrets. They must have some, but they really want to please their parents more than we did, because we were children of the 60s and 70s. We didn't want to please our parents.
¿Cómo te suena si te digo que Hospital de Ranas es una especie de Catcher in the Rye, el guardián en el trecenteno de la adolescencia femenina?
Oh, it sounds great. It sounds great. It's probably not quite accurate, but who cares?
Acá Salinger es muy leído. ¿Te gusta Salinger?
Yes, I like some things more than others. There's some things he's written that are just really not so good, but and he didn't write that much. Have they opened up that safe and found I don't think they found anything, did they?
Yeah, parece que sí, sí.
They did?
Tiene más libros.
Oh. I anthologized a book of stories called Best American Stories it was 100 Years of Best American Stories, which is an anthology series in the United States. Every year they put together the best stories of the year. And they did a 20th century roundup, and John Updike was the editor of that one. And then they had a 100-year anniversary, which came in the year 2015. So it was from 1915 to 2015, and they wanted another editor. So they asked me to do it. And so I was going through stories that had not been included in the Updike one, because I didn't want to duplicate the Updike one. I wanted other ones. And there were so many interesting stories that he had left out. He had left out Fitzgerald's Babylon Revisited, which is great. He had left out James Baldwin's Sonny's Blues, so I put those in. And in the midst of all this was a story that had appeared in 1949 in Good Housekeeping magazine by J.D. Salinger that had never appeared in any book whatsoever. It was called, I think, The Girl I Knew. And it was about a young tutor in Austria, American, tutoring a well-to-do girl who he's kind of teenage girl who he's kind of enchanted with, but who clearly ends up being killed in the Holocaust. And I'm making it sound terrible by
summarizing it that way. But it's a brilliant story. It's a brilliant story. And Salinger had already died, and I thought, I want to put this in. And the publisher said, you're going to have trouble getting permission from the Salinger estate. I said, I'm ready to try. And so I wrote Matt Salinger, the son, who is a film producer and a very, very brutal and fierce watchdog over that Salinger estate. And
como su padre.
Well, Salinger let things go and then didn't. You know, he let this story be published in Good Housekeeping in it was a Holocaust. It was a story about the Holocaust in 1949 in Good Housekeeping magazine, and it was brilliant. It was just, and no one had ever seen it except readers of Good Housekeeping in 1949 and the readers of Best American Short Stories in 1949, because it had appeared in that volume. So I wrote Matt Salinger, the son, and I got the fiercest letter back. Oh my gosh, it was so scary. I won't quote from it, but it was very mean. It basically was like, you have no understanding of my father if you think I would say yes to this. You know nothing of his work if you think I would say yes to this. It was like, okay, I guess this isn't going in. But it really broke my heart because it was such a great story. I wanted it in there. But, so we'll see how Matt Salinger, and he's, we'll see how he handles all of that stuff. But there is a beautiful story from 1949, get ready for it, that you haven't seen, that maybe Matt Salinger will let you see at some point. It's really great. So.
Y Alice Munro sigue siendo tu escritora favorita?
I think so, probably. She's certainly my favorite short story writer.
¿Por qué? ¿Qué es lo que te gusta de ella?
Although I haven't been reading her recently. I mean, I think I went through years of reading her a lot. I just like the complexity of her stories. They use time both as a subject and as a medium, which is unusual in a short story. As I was saying, short stories are often about caughtness and people in a kind of state of paralysis. Her stories are not really that. Her stories are like little novels, and they jump around in time. They're really radical, and they're full of violence. They're full of plot. They're full of things. And people don't know that enough about her. They think, oh, she's this nice little Canadian lady writing stuff up there. But, she's got, in one of her collections, she's got two, not just one, but two decapitations. Two people who have their head cut off in two different stories. I mean, that's something for a Canadian woman. Right?
Hay otra en la que una chica ahoga a su amiga.
Oh, there's so many drownings. She's obsessed with drowning. Yeah, there's lots of drownings. It's you just never know what's going to happen. There's the peril of living and the peril of life is just and of the world, and the peril and the menace slightly of men. She has women fall in love with men who are really kind of dicey. They're kind of sketchy men, but they keep on with them. And so it's very human, She just, they're I don't know. I just, and she looks, like Henry James, she looks at things from different angles. Like she'll have, a marriage or a family situation set up one way and have the story look at it from one point of view, and then she'll switch around and have a story look at it from another point of view. So you get a different feeling and a different outcome, sort of. but she's just a great writer.
Volviendo a quién será a cargo del Hospital de Ranas, la protagonista siente que llegó tarde a los años 60. Escribir también tiene que ver con esta sensación de llegar tarde de demorarse en los procesos.
I have no idea. What did you really ask me? Santiago, the translator, has given me a question that is impossible to answer.
Okay.
In my earphones. Or maybe it's the flight attendant saying, all right, we're approaching landing. Put your trays in the upright position.
Escribir es lento.
Writing is slow, yes.
Y a veces tiene que ver con, narrar lo que uno no pudo vivir. La protagonista de Hospital de Ranas siente que llegó tarde a los años 60. Sentí que había alguna relación con este hecho de escribir, de sentir que uno puede, al escribir, vivir lo que no ha vivido.
Oh, yeah. You can write about things that you haven't lived. That's the best kind of writing. That's the most fun. It's not as much, it's fun to sort of start at the edge of your life and then write a little to one side of it and write something. You should always be, if you're writing fiction, you should be, I think, we discussed this before, you should be writing something that you actually haven't lived but is kind of close to at least that's how I do it, so that it participates in your life, but it also gives you a new experience, because the newness of the experience for you will help create the newness of it for the reader and the freshness of it for the reader. I do feel, this is why I don't write personal essays or nonfiction very much, because I start making things up, actually, is what happens. But making things up is also what keeps things a little exciting. And finally, sometimes more honest and true, because you're close enough to sort of feel you have the amnesty to tell the truth. When you start writing nonfiction, you go, oh, I can't say that. My brother will be really mad, so you start to fudge, you know.
En ¿Quién será a cargo del Hospital de Ranas? Hay también una verdadera obsesión con la música. Mencionás más de 50 canciones y piezas musicales.
Oh my.
Hice una lista de Spotify, después te la
50?
paso. Yes. ¿Por qué esa obsesión con la música? ¿De dónde está también a lo largo de toda tu obra, ¿no? ¿Por qué ¿de dónde viene este interés por la música y por qué lo incluís en tu ficción?
I think everyone is interested in music. I don't know anyone who isn't interested in music. I used to say that was the one mistake Leonard Cohen made in his song Hallelujah. He has that line that says, but you don't really care for music, do you? And I thought, who's he talking to? Who doesn't care for music? And why would that person know Leonard Cohen? I don't know. And why would he write a song to her? Or him, or whoever he's writing to. But it's true that in my novels, I think I got carried away. There's music in the stories, but all three novels are really saturated with music, and I didn't really plan it that way. But when you spend that much time with your characters, and a novel takes years to write, you want to have some interests in common, and all of my characters, all my main characters are musicians of sorts in all three novels. My last novel, a gate at the stairs. She's a bass player, upright bass and an electric bass. And so there's music there. And then in Who Will Run the Frog Hospital, there's a couple of instruments, but the singing is what creates the sororal bond with her friend and with other girls, and there's lots of singing. And also my childhood was very much like that. It was full of singing and we all played instruments. My best friend played the flute and the guitar, and I played the guitar and the piano. We all played the piano. We would all just walk around singing. We didn't have smartphones. We didn't, it was a very old-fashioned childhood, really, in a way. But we had the radio and records, and I think there's something about the teenage brain that just loves music because it expresses things, and it just registers moods and existential conditions that are very, very familiar to teenagers, and they're like, yes, this is something I understand. So there's lots of mutual understanding between young people and music, I think.
Pero también trabajás en la escritura, el aspecto musical del lenguaje, ¿lo pensás como una música también? La propia escritura.
I think of prose as having, I think of novels as having a voice, I think of stories as having a voice, and I think the voice consists of sentences that have a cadence. So I pay attention to that. So there's a rhythm, there's a rhythm that's being considered. And writers will tell you that all the time. They'll say, oh, I had to take out that word, the rhythm was wrong. I sometimes tell my students, be careful not to say scarlet when you could say red. Because that's what Sylvia Plath did. Her poems are so great. You'll never see her use the word scarlet, maybe once. But she uses the word red because it has a really strong beat. And it helps create the voice and the cadence. Red is a great word in English. And in Spanish it's rosa, or what is it? Rojo.
Sí. Tenemos varias palabras.
Rojo is not...
It
sounds
strong also.
Yeah. Rojo is a gentler word than red. Yeah, it's gentle. So.
También en tus cuentos y novelas hay mucho humor. ¿De dónde viene ese sentido del humor?
It's just in the world. It's just in the world. The world is very funny, and life is very funny. And if you pay attention, you may want to include it. Because I think if you write a long enough narrative and there's no humor in it, you haven't been paying attention. It doesn't mean that everything's a comedy and nothing can be a tragedy. It means that life is a mix of all those things. And even in the midst of tragic things, there's some funny stuff that happens. And you should include it. You should pay attention to it.
¿Pero te cuesta ser graciosa? ¿Es el fruto de un trabajo o te sale fácil?
It's not hard for me to be funny to myself, in that I can write something down and I think, that's pretty funny. But not everyone's going to think that. And so I never know. It's, all writing is an act of faith. So I will write a lot of things that are not as funny as I think they are. But although I once wrote in a story, I had the heroine say how many men she had slept with. I think it was like 11 or something. And I showed it to a friend of mine who's French, and she said, And she just fell out of her chair laughing. She said, "You have no idea how funny that is." Apparently that's very funny in France. The idea that you would count the number of your boyfriends or something. I don't know. It wasn't that funny in English, but it was very funny in French, apparently. So.
Y en ese sentido, tu literatura, tu obra es muy difícil de traducir.
Yes.
¿Qué es lo que imaginás que pasa con quien lo lee en otro idioma?
I think they tear their hair out. I don't know. I don't know what happens. It's, my hat goes off to anyone trying to translate anything, but I do know I'm a very American writer with an American voice and American references, and I sort of apologize for it and don't apologize for it. It's just what I am, and what I do. And I have met translators before who come up to me, and it's clear they want to strangle me, and they want to say things like, "You have to think of your translators when you're writing. Think of your translators in your next book." And I said, you can't write that way. You can't think of your translators as you're writing. You just can't. I can't. So the things that are, obviously always lost in translation are jokes, humor, and poetry. So those things have to be reinvented by the translator. So it's a kind of collaboration if you're going to get the humor and the poetry down. Now, I know, this will just be meaningless to a Spanish audience, but there was again, with this woman who was reading this story of mine in France, she said, my friend, she was reading, and this joke had been, I had a joke that said, what do you call, see, it only works in English, but what do you call a woman who marries a man with no arms and no legs? And the answer was Carrie, because Carrie is a woman's name, so that's what she would be called. But of course, Carrie means you have to carry your husband, because he has no arms and no legs. All right. So in France, they took that joke, because you can't make that work in French. They took it, and they said, what do you call a woman who marries an unemployed dentist? Carie. Tooth rot.
Carie, en español también. Carie.
Yeah. So that's how the joke went. This is how hard translation is, and I don't know what to say about it except I don't know. You're working. I mean, it is a collaboration with the translator. So, and some people do it better than others, but.
¿Disfrutás escribiendo? ¿Te divertís?
Sometimes.
¿Y a veces la pasás mal?
And sometimes it's hard. Yes. Sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's fun. Yeah. Isn't that true for you?
Yes. No, mayormente la paso mal, pero sí.
You usually have a bad time?
Always.
You don't have it always.
Yes.
Never?
Hablemos de vos.
Never a fun moment?
No me acuerdo de ninguno. Pero, por favor, hablemos de vos.
Oh, yeah, that's not good. You should have a couple of fun ones. It's hard. Yes. It is hard. But it can be
Quizá
fun.
alguna vez me la pasé bien. Pero bueno, seguimos con la entrevista a vos.
Okay.
Bueno, voy un poquito en orden refiriéndome a tus libros. Tu libro de 1998, Birds of America, hay un cuento, es más de lo que puedo decir acerca de cierta gente, que es It's more than I can say about some people, que es acerca de la dificultad de hablar en público y también acerca de la dificultad de expresar los sentimientos. ¿Escribir para vos tuvo que ver con estas dificultades?
Perhaps, I've forgotten. But yeah, I was very, very shy and quiet for a very long time. And so writing, I think that happens for a lot of writers. They can express themselves on the page much more easily than they can, you know, in front of an audience. If I could get out in front of an audience and actually just, you know, recite things and speak, you know, and tell stories, if I could be a storyteller just, you know, without pen and paper, that would be an amazement. That's why I'm sort of in awe of actors and actresses. I once met Meryl Streep and I just thought I was going to die. I thought, she's just so amazing. She is amazing. Because they have the thing that writers don't have. They have, you know, this fantastic, it's physical, it's mental, they have tremendous concentration. All art is concentration. But I think if you're shy, you're sort of blocked. So, but in the privacy of a room with a table and a pen and a piece of paper, there's no one to keep you blocked. And so then the concentration comes and you can write. I used to like writing just history papers and things. I liked doing that at school. There was something about just writing that I liked. Because it wasn't speaking. Speaking was hard. And so that story that you're referring to is about a mother and daughter who go to Ireland to kiss the Blarney Stone, which is supposed to give you the gift of speech, gift of eloquent speech. You know, it's gift of eloquence.
Y logran decir lo que sienten después de besar esta piedra que da elocuencia.
I think the daughter is. The mother kind of is still hidden a little in her feelings.
Después de tomar algunas cervezas logran expresarse, ¿no?
Yeah, we don't know, because they're drinking beer at the end. But at the end, the daughter realizes the difficulty of her mother's life and gives her this fantastic sentimental toast, which is so overwhelming to the mother that the mother can't really even respond. So the Blarney Stone hasn't really worked for the mother, but for the daughter, yes.
Tu siguiente libro fue la novela A Gate at the Stairs, Al pie de la escalera, en el cual hay una escena terrible en la que muere un niño atropellado y sus padres lo ven. Hay otras escenas muy terribles también con muertes de niños en tus cuentos. En una de ellas a una mujer se le cae un bebé de una amiga y muere también. Es un terrible comienzo de un cuento tuyo. ¿Y ahí sufrís cuando escribís eso? ¿Por qué escribís esas cosas tan terribles?
I do suffer. I don't like to write those scenes, but I feel that once I've decided the story has to have this thing, then it has to have it. The scene you're talking about in A Gate at the Stairs, I think that was the last scene I wrote. I was avoiding it. I wrote all around it. I didn't want to actually write it yet. And accidents like that I have heard of twice, like the accident I described. And even the governor of Wisconsin phoned me after he read the book because he had been driving with his family, and his son was misbehaving, and he said, "Get out of the car." And he made the son get out of the car, and they drove off. And he said, "Did I tell you that story? Is that why you put it in the novel?" I said, "No, I didn't know." But I'd heard of 2 other things, of accidents that were close to the accident that I described. Now, the governor ended up coming to his senses and coming back and picking up his son, who was just standing there on this road. But any number of things could have happened. It was, So, and that was our good Democratic governor. It wasn't the Republican governor. He was a nice guy.
¿Lo conocías o te llamó sin conocerse?
I knew him a tiny bit. I knew him a little, yeah. And I knew his wife a little. I didn't know about this incident, yeah. But I've heard, and yeah, I don't, but sometimes I feel, like bad things have to happen in order to tell this particular story. And that's not my favorite part to write. It's really hard. It's not my favorite part to write. So I do avoid things. I have things I'm avoiding right now in the novel that I'm working on now, because they're too hard.
¿Podemos saber cuáles?
No. But it's, the hard stuff to read is the hard stuff to write. So I don't know, maybe I haven't written it well, and maybe that's why it's hard to read. I don't know. But it's hard to read because the facts of what's being described are really, unfortunate. But there's there are worse things. I mean, can you imagine? I don't know. I mean, I'm not writing about Chernobyl. I'm not writing about the bombing of Nagasaki. I'm not, there's so many horrible things that these smaller things can perhaps be more devastating for a reader because they can identify a little more with a child being, hit by a car. But I don't have a lot of that. Do I? I don't have a lot of that. But it's hard to write. It is hard to write.
Si no me equivoco, vas alternando entre escribir un libro de cuentos, una novela, un libro de cuentos, una novela. ¿Es a propósito eso?
It's just a story collection.
And then a novel. All your career.
That is how it's gone, yeah.
¿Por algún motivo?
I think it's a natural rhythm in that, you build up a collection, you build up a number of stories over the years and you could put them in a collection. But then by the time you have that collection, you're really eager to broaden the canvas. You've got another idea. So it's a natural rhythm for ideas hatching out, I think. At least for me. I think for a while Anne Beatty had that, but I think she's disrupted that with a couple of extra novels.
En tu último libro de cuentos, Bark, gracias por la compañía, hay una versión de un cuento de Nabokov y hay otro cuento que es una especie de versión más libre de la novela The Wings of the Dove, Las alas de la paloma, de Henry James. No sé si estás de acuerdo con que es una versión de esa novela, pero ¿por qué decidiste incluir versiones de otros cuentos de otros autores, cuentos o novelas?
The Nabokov story was a story I knew, and then one day I read it, and I just saw it a completely different way. I saw it suddenly from the mother's point of view, who is not really in the Nabokov story so much, and also from the child's point of view, who's completely gone in the Nabokov story. And I thought, what if you did an update which of this where it was, I mean, the Nabokov story is a perfect story. And so I was being rather bold. I was being a vandal, really, going into that story. And then, but I followed it very closely, and I didn't know whether what I was doing was even permissible. But it's about a child in a mental institution, and the parents go to see him. And in the Nabokov story, they're not allowed in, and they go back home. And the story that I wrote, they actually go in, except the couple is not really his parents. It's the mother and the guy she's going out with who's trying to break up with her because the sick son is too much for him. The real life father has passed away. So that was my situation, but I tracked the Nabokov story very closely in imitation, in honor of it, really. It's a fantastic story. So I call it referential. It's referring to the story and to the referential mania that's in both stories. The Wings of the Dove story, which I do call Wings, yeah. Wings of the Dove is a big, fat Henry James novel. I think it was his last novel. And all I did was take a plot element. But Henry James was always taking these plot elements that other people use, but he used best a triangle. You know, two people plotting against another person in a kind of marriage and money thing. And I think the narrative that has taken that novel and done it best is Terrence Malick's Days of Heaven. That's, I don't know if you know that story, that film. It's a film, it's a beautiful film. It's really my favorite film. And the plot is The Wings of the Dove. It's two people plotting against another person, but it all not coming out the way the plotters intend. So, which is what Henry James was constantly interested in. So I just took that. But I did want people to know I was taking it, so I called it Wings, and I gave them little names that were similar. But again, I made them musicians. You know, I don't know. More music, and they're musicians without much music, though. There's not much music, actual music in that one, even though they are musicians.
Creo que citas esta música canadiense, ahora se me fue el nombre, pero ya me voy a acordar, Cat Power.
Oh, yes.
Hay imanes de ladera de Cat Power.
Oh, yes. Yes. Right. I forgot about that. She has a dog that she calls Cat.
Yes.
See, I thought that was hilarious. But, you know, most people wouldn't find that funny.
¿Y se puede enseñar a escribir? Vos te dedicás a dar clases. ¿Se puede enseñar a escribir?
Sure, but can it be learned? That's it's taught all the time, as we know. But do people, but math is taught all the time too, and no one can learn math. So I think it's taught the way any of the arts are taught. Either just, you know, here are your great predecessors. You know, these are the people you should be looking at. These are the people you should be reading. Here's some things you should think about in what you've shown me that you've done. Think about changing this. You know, you keep the conversation going. And some students will really get it and get better. I have great students, and I've had students who, I don't want to recite all their names, but they're doing very well. So clearly, it can be taught. but they can't, I can't really take that much credit. All I can take credit for is not having discouraged them. I obviously didn't discourage them. They went off and published fantastic things. So it's like teaching anything. I don't think it's special. I don't think it's different from painting. I don't think it's different from anything in the humanities, really. It might not even be that different from the sciences, where you have to do your lab work and you're going to put things together that don't work. You're going to conduct experiments that fail. But can this be taught? Yes. Yes, you have to understand that some experiments fail and some succeed. So it's a lot like science.
Así que, ¿qué le dirías a alguien que quiere escribir? Que quiere dedicarse a escribir ficción?
I just heard, who was it who said this? Somebody said, I went to a reading and the writer was asked, what would you tell an audience they should do if they want to write? And she said, vote Donald Trump out of office. She just felt that was the thing to say if you want a world where you can actually sit at a desk and write narrative art. I would say just write. There's no magic. There's no magic potion. You just have to sit down and do it. You have to sit in a chair and take out your laptop and just do it. And don't be afraid of rough drafts, bad versions. Just, you can always rewrite. The computer's your friend. I mean, it used to be, before there were computers, we had to retype everything. And so that became rather daunting. But now, no problem. You can just, the revision process is very simple. And you can store all your bad drafts in a file called bad drafts. And just read. Read a lot. And don't worry about what you're reading. Don't read something that you feel you have to. Read something that you want to. And then write something that you would like to read. And I used to always tell my students, write something you'd never show your mother. But of course, they've got their cell phones out, with taking pictures of it and sending it to their mother. So I don't know. I might not be succeeding in that regard, but I would just say read, write, be free. Write something really that feels really daring and weird. That's what I would say.
Okay. Bueno, Lorrie, creo que se nos acabó el tiempo. Te agradezco mucho por esta presencia acá en el Teatro Cervantes. Espero que tengas una linda estada en Buenos Aires y muchísimas gracias también por tu obra que muchos acá amamos. Un aplauso muy grande para Lorrie Moore.
Muchas gracias. This is a beautiful theater. Thank you very much.